I'm Femi OK.
And I'm Malika Bilal, and you're in the stream.
Today, people power in Algeria. We will ask how popular movement for political reform is changing the country.
Are you in Algeria? What changes do you want to see? Let us know live via Twitter or in our YouTube chat.
Hi, my name is Anita Hofschneider. I'm a reporter at Honolulu Civil Beat, and you are in the stream.
Protesters in Algeria are saying enough is enough. For weeks, young Algerians have been leading a movement against President Abdelaziz Bouteflika, who has ruled the country for 20 years. Bowing to the pressure of protesters last week, Bouteflika reversed his decision to run for a fifth term in office. Despite his promise to stand down, protests have continued. On Tuesday, thousands of students, professors and health workers demonstrated in Algiers to demand immediate change. Many criticised the government for being out of touch with everyday Algerians.
This system is doomed to end. Today, the people are united around a single phrase, that is, change the regime. And we tell them, go away, you are lost. Algeria has men and skills.
I am here to tell the system enough. It's over. 20 years, you ruined us. You sucked us dry. We aren't afraid. Leave us. Sons of traitors are governing us. They took the cow with its grass and its milk and everything. Enough. Let our children live. Let our children live. Let our children live.
Algeria was due to hold elections in April, but on Monday, President Bouteflika once again insisted that the vote should only be held after a new constitution is approved through a national dialogue. Well, here to tell us more about the movement for reform in Algeria and Istanbul, Yasmina Alouche, a researcher and writer who focuses on North Africa. In Beirut, Dalia Ghanem, a resident scholar at the Carnegie Middle East Center. And in Algiers, Amal Boubacar, a sociologist. Welcome everyone to the stream. I want to start with some pictures to give our audience a sense of the scale of these protests. So take a look at my screen here. This posted by Rida Amrani and has been shared several times on Twitter. He writes, impressive drone footage showing the extent of the largest popular protest in Algeria's history against the president's plan to cling to power. And you can just see the scale of it there. People looking tiny like ants. This is how that looks from a bird's eye view. Move over to this tweet here. This is Ben Shemis, and have a listen to what those protests actually sound like. And then today, we got this one from a member of our community. Malia here says, I'm marching with students in Algiers. Today, incredibly emotional and powerful. Students United will never be defeated. And she posts a picture of herself from the Tuesday, March 19th protest. You can see her there. She sent that to us right before airtime. Dalia, you have been among these protesters. What is it like being out there in the streets?
Yes, indeed. I marched with the student on February 26 in Ben Aknoun, and then I marched with what came to be called the 1 Million March that took place in March 1st. And I have to say that was very powerful, very emotional. As a political scientist, it was amazing to observe the protests. But as a national citizen of Algeria, it was very emotional for me. I think we are living a very unique sequence of events that we haven't seen in Algeria since the 90s. When my mother used to drag me at protest saying no to terrorism. So it was, the scale of the protests were amazing. The behavior and the peaceful nature of these protests also is something that really was impressive. The organization as well, each time, for instance, we would reach a police barricade, a protester would, raise their arms and start chanting Silmiya, Silmiya, which means peaceful, peaceful. They also chanted Jish, Shurta, Khawa, Khawa, which means military and police are brothers. It was very you know, emotional. People were giving us food. They were giving us bottles of water. I think this is the first time in a while that we haven't seen Algerian that united.
Okay. Yasmina, you tweeted out 19th of March and you made a connection between the 60s and what's happening today. Have a look here at Yasmina's tweets. She talks about 62. She talks about 19th of March 2019 with protesters and students of doctors and other sectors and cities in Algeria all going out. How would you describe what is happening in Algeria right now?
So based off the comparison of particular significant dates that we're seeing today of the 19th of March, what you're seeing is a reclamation of the national history of Algeria that for many years has been manipulated by the ruling elite of war generals who have used their status to legitimize their power hold. And you're having this young generation now who refuse to see the governance of these war generals based on their historic, what they've gained, in the history of the country, and more of what the damage they've done whilst in governance. And you're seeing, 70% of the population are under the age of 30. They're fed up, frustrated at having a president that is clearly unable, who has been unable to rule the affairs of the country since suffering a stroke in 2013, who has not addressed the country in the last 6 years. And there's just a general consensus amongst the unions, amongst various sectors in society and the public that enough is enough.
Enough is enough. That's represented here. I want to show a series of tweets put online by Widadi. That's his handle online. This is Nasser Widadi. And he shares some of the pictures that people are sharing online. This says, Algeria deep cleaning. It's referring to rampant corruption and graft symbolized by Algeria's ruling clan. I'll scroll down a little bit more, and these are so visual. South Africa got Madiba, we got Masiba, or a disaster. And that is referring to the president there sharing a cartoon. And this last one that I want to show, Amel, he writes, Algeria, this is an office term, not an underwear brief for you to stretch. And he's quoting a picture that someone has there referring to Bouteflika canceling the elections and stretching his fourth term. So clearly some creativity out in these protests. But Amel, how significant do you see these protests?
I think they are major, and I think that above all it's a declaration of independence towards the regime and towards the Algerian ruling elite who has been hijacking the state and its resources since 1962. It's really about saying, well, we are going to do our own thing. We don't want to negotiate with you. No, thank you. We don't want to have anything to do with you. And we do not buy your myth anymore. The myth about the fact that Algerians are violent, that they can't agree with each other, that if they ever take the streets, there will be another civil war. You know that in the 90s in Algeria, there has been a struggle, there has been a putsch first in 1992 and after the victory of the Islamist party. And there has been then a struggle between Islamic groups and the army and security forces. So Algerian people are really trying to get independent from all that was organized by the regime, its myths, its opacity, its efforts to use demands of change just to stay in place and stay in power. And that's how we should understand these cartoons and this way to and this joy to be together with not having the regime interfering in Algerian politics for once.
On March the 13th, Reuters took this picture on my laptop of a student protester, and she says here, you wanted 5, that's a 5th term for the president, here are 5, and then she lists the reasons why people are on the streets. She doesn't want a term extension, no more falling people, no more corrupt government, no more manipulation, and no to foreign intervention. Dalia, does that succinctly sum up why it is that you keep going back to Algeria to protest? Is there a vision from the protesters about exactly why they're protesting and what they want?
Yes, indeed. But actually, when the protest started, the demand was very clear and focused. And it was one demand. It was no to the fifth term of Abdelaziz Bouteflika, who has been in power for 20 years. Unfortunately, the incapacity of the regime to respond and to answer quickly to the demand made the protest go bigger and the demand extend. So we went from no to the fifth term to no to the entire regime, no to the entire system, and to slogans such as الشعب يريد إسقاط النظام, which means the people want the regime to fall. So this is the incapacity of the regime to answer and to dispense what it used to do, during the 90s, but also during the Arab Spring that didn't happen, in fact, in Algeria. Why? Because we were in front of a regime who had a capacity to answer quickly. What the regime used to do is to dispense political and economic reforms, or in terms, in forms of packages. In 2012, for instance, it answered to the Arab Spring by dispensing political reforms, by allowing, for instance, 21 new political parties to register. And it has also very important economic resources. So it was capable to buy social peace. Today, the regime doesn't have the means to buy social peace anymore. So on the economic front, it is incapable of buying social peace. And on the political front, the regime seems adamant about keeping Bouteflika. But again, the question is why they are so adamant. This is almost a ridiculous situation. I would say it is ridiculous. Why? Because this has to be found within the nature of the regime. The Algerian regime is a very complex and opaque regime. It is, composed by different stratas and circles of power and decision circles. You have the FLN apparatchik, you have the bureaucracy, you have the military that are very powerful. In fact, the military are not governing, but they are ruling. And of course, you have the business tycoons. And all these different circles are cemented by deep economic and political interest. So moving all this will take a lot of time and a lot of efforts. So this is why the regime is so deeply rooted that it is very hard to move it. But again, Algerians are realistic about what they can change and what they cannot change. Right. And one thing they changed already is that they destroyed the wall of fear that has been there since the end of the civil war in 1999.
And Dalia, I heard what you were saying about the circles that are propping up the system of government there. Anna here on Twitter says something similar. The shadow government should reveal themselves to the Algerian people, referring in a way to those circles. But at the head of that is this person, and it's written in this tweet here: for heaven's sake, you're 82 years old and you can't walk. Why not retire and rest? What is it that still makes you desire to be president? Go home to your family and rest. And of course, they're referring to Abdelaziz Bouteflika, the president. Yasmina, talk to us about this sentiment. Are you hearing this from other people, not understanding why this president still wants to be at the helm?
Well, the secrecy that's surrounding Bouteflika at the moment means that for many Algerians, there's doubt whether what the status exactly of his health is, and there is even more sinister rumors that he may not even be alive. There's also a contradiction in the statements that he's released. So, for example, on the 3rd of March, his candidacy was submitted to the Constitutional Council via his campaign manager, but a week later, his statement on the 11th of March ascertained that he had no intention of running for a 5th mandate, and that his age and health were factors that drove that particular decision, which obviously contradicts the fact that a medical certificate was produced in order for him to be inept file his candidacy and to continue with the 5th term. So we're seeing these questions of who exactly are releasing these statements, who are pulling the strings behind the current decisions, and for how long we will see him head the current government or overlooking as a caretaker president the current transition, democratic transition, and calls for national dialogue and conference within the next year.
Ladies, I want to show our audience what it means to have Dalia, may I just show our audience what it actually means to have a president who is, let's say, incapacitated or not seen speaking in public for at least 6 years. So at official events like this one, you can see it on my laptop here, his portrait presides over official events. I'll just show you a few more of these pictures. And sometimes it's of varying different ages of President Bouteflika, and you see him here. This is bizarre. And going back to the official event where the president is on an easel, and then finally at a rally and leading a parade right there at the front, looking somewhat younger. This is very strange, Amel. Who is actually running Algeria right now? Obviously, it can't be a portrait that is brought out during these official events. So who is running Algeria?
Well, you know, for sure, the physical absence of Bouteflika has added to the feeling of being humiliated worldwide, especially Algerians were saying the whole world is making fun of us because of this frame only, not the president. There's a popular song in Algeria that has been sang during the protest that said, "We don't have a president, we only have a picture." And that's indeed, this feeling was deep inside and very humiliating to the Algerians. But I believe that now it's really beyond Bouteflika. The international coverage has been focusing a lot on Bouteflika as such. But it's even beyond Bouteflika. People, you are asking me who is leading Algeria. People knows that, and the Algerian people know that, of course, there's the president clientele, which has been growing and growing and growing these past years, including this businessman Daya was mentioning, but also a whole corrupted bureaucracy, and also simply average people who thought they may benefit from their allegiance to Bouteflika to get a house or to get a job and so on. But most importantly, you have the army, and that's still the biggest taboo in Algeria today. And an interesting sign that things are changing is that the taboo of the army is slowly fading away. Until recently, people were only talking about Bouteflika and the regime, but not about the army. They were only singing, as it has been mentioned also, Jish and Shab Khawa Khawa. So the people and the army are brothers. But the thing is that we have to differentiate between the corrupted military commandment and the whole and the big amount of people who are part of the military. Each Algerian family has a member of the military, or I mean, it's quite common that because the army has privileges and so on. And these people have started to join up the demonstrations. They have started to say, well, we are fed up about with the regime as well, and we want to change that. During last demonstrations, the police have also sang songs with the demonstrators. This is a huge change in Algeria, especially after, as I was saying, what the Algerians have lived during the 90s. So a lot of things are changing, and I would say that the question of who is leading Algeria is not of Algerians' interest anymore. They are saying, we are president, we are the police, we are the army. That's what they are singing during the protests. And that's the sign that they really want to organize and to create their own political culture, to get back the control of their institution. Currently in Algiers and in Algeria overall, there's a lot of initiatives within universities, at local neighborhoods and so on. People are trying to debate, to organize themselves, to see how they can organize a transition, to see how they can talk to each other, to organize the life of their neighborhoods and to organize protests, to avoid violence and so on. So
right.
this is really
Ahmed, what you were saying there is represented in this comment we just got on YouTube from Lilacs, who says, I'm Algerian, and I'm proud of our peaceful protests. We can make it. And for our president, we don't accept the rumors because he's just a face for the real people that are trying to ruin Algeria. And as you mentioned, many people believe that it is the army and the military that is propping him up. But I wanted to push on just a little bit. I wanted to share with our audience a video comment we got from someone whose tweet I read at the very beginning. She wrote this piece for Aljazeera.com. Algerian people won the battle, but the struggle is not yet over. Have a listen to what Maria told the stream.
Whilst the withdrawal of Bouteflika felt like a temporary victory, the Algerian people also knew better, given that the elections were subsequently cancelled. They have known this regime for decades, they know its capabilities, and they know that they will do everything that they can to control whatever happens next, what candidate is presented, and how the elections take place. So it felt like a temporary battle was won, but in reality the war continues.
So Dalia, if the battle is over but the war continues, what is next in that quote-unquote war? What comes next?
Yeah, well, true. That's only a battle that was won because, you know, it was very clear from the declaration that he is not running seeking a fifth term, but he is extending the fourth, and there is no election anymore. So this is not even really a victory. So the question that remains now is what will happen to these protests? And this will be, you know, I wrote a piece on the New York Times and I hinted to that, but I am going to write a new piece about what the Algerian protests should do in order for their movement not to fade away, because this is what usually happened to a lot of protests. We've seen that in the Arab world during the Arab Spring. So I believe that the first condition is, you know, to continue practicing what is called in political science the political jujutsu, meaning non-violence. Non-violence is a very, very strategic approach, and Algerians understood that, and this is why they don't like the analogy with the Arab Spring. They understood that, you know, during the 90s, they used violence, and the violence was counterproductive. Followed 10 years of civil war. So today, Algerians, they are sticking to their guns, if I may say, but they're peaceful guns. And this is a very important condition because triggering, you know, the regime security forces would put an end to the protests, would alienate the people who are already there and those who still have to be convinced. So non-violence.
So Dalia, we've been talking, you've in particular been talking about the current administration in Algeria. I would like to play a comment from the new Prime Minister in Algeria. This is what he said last week. He says, I have seen the protests and I'm taking note. Have a listen, have a look.
The new government will be a formation that will represent all the energies, and especially the youth, through Algerian women and men, and hopefully be up to the expectations of these ambitions. We have seen students, we have seen teachers, we have seen doctors, we have seen all parts of the Algerian society. And I assure you once again, we are ready, determined, and our desire is strong, and our doors are open to discuss and exchange visions.
So I've just been watching Amal's face, watching the Prime Minister. She was not looking convinced that this was going to happen, that change was going to happen. Amal, we're in the last little bit of our show. Bring us home.
No, because, you know, that's exactly the problem of the international coverage of Algeria. We are talking about this regime as if it was a legitimate one, as if we do not have sham elections in Algeria. I mean, everybody now knows that this government is highly corrupted, that they have not been designed by the people to rule. And that's a problem because then you have to think and you have to understand that not only they are not legitimate among the Algerian population, not because of their bad governance, but because they have stolen the power and they have stolen state's resources. That's really what is going on in Algeria since 1962. That's one thing. The second thing, excuse me, is that international coverage is also somehow emphasizing on Algeria's external role of stability in the region and how Paris and Washington are endorsing this pillar of stability in the region. That's really making Algerians angry because first, they don't want foreign interference. They have said so very clearly. They say this is a family affair, so we don't want you
Dalia
to...
and Yasmina, thank you so much for your perspective on what is happening in Algeria right now, even today, on Tuesday, with the protests. Wrapping up with our online community.
And a protester, this is the gamer who writes on YouTube, I participated in the protests, very powerful, full of emotion. Emotion turned into anger for the freedom that we deserve, but are not getting. There's a lot of unity.
I want to leave you with a picture that was taken by Dalia. She's been in the protest, flying into the protest, and this one really struck me. Term 1, Term 2, Term 3, Term 4, no Term 5. I'll leave you with that thought. Thanks for watching, everybody.